bunch for being a part of our video today. We could name this thing Two Bald Men Talk About the Bible, you know. So Rudy Ross is with
old bald men.
Two old bald men, correct. So Rudy's with me today, and we're talking about Isaiah. And there's really an interesting passage. It's really striking. He says in Isaiah chapter 1, verse 15, "When you stretch out your hands, I'll hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I'll not listen. Your hands are full of blood. Wash yourselves. Make yourselves clean. Remove the evil of your doings from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. Learn to do good. Seek justice. Rescue the oppressed. Defend the orphan and plead for the widow." I'm through talking. What in the world is that all about? What does that say to you about our worship?
Well, what it says to me is that, and I'm only talking about myself, that I think everybody can identify with this. You know, we're in a worship service, we're praising God, we're thinking we're one of the good guys, and we're praying for the world that in our judgment has gone astray, and but we're really in the same camp because we're not really doing the secret of the Lord's Prayer. Father, may your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That means giving over our free will to His, knowing that His is the best for us, with the exception is that we always think we've got this one. And so when I read Bob's blog, a lot of it has to do, really the base of it has to do with living a Jesus kind of life.
Right. So
when we look at ourselves, stand back and look at ourselves in worship, are we really who we think we are, or are we who we say we are?
Right. Boy.
And I think one of the things that jumps out at me in this particular passage is that if you want to live a Jesus kind of life, you're going to help the weak in society.
Right.
And it's the orphans, widows, and aliens. And that's where I think this passage is talking about. From that, you learn things about how gracious God is to you. When you begin to do things that Jesus would do, He joins you, and you know that He's joining you.
Yeah. So my take on this is we become like what we worship. And so if we worship the Lord and we really connect with Him, we're going to become like Jesus. That's going to move us into that Jesus kind of life. On the other hand, and this is God's criticism, I think, through Isaiah, is if you're worshiping, and we're going to see this a lot in Isaiah, on one hand, the people of God wanted to hold on to God with this hand, but they also wanted to hold on to false gods with that hand. And Jesus said you can't serve two masters. You're going to love one and hate the other, or vice versa. And so the one that they were worshiping, the false god they were worshiping, ended up dominating, and they began oppressing people, hurting people, harming people, or not caring for people like Rudy's talking about. And so our worship needs to change us, and if it doesn't change us, we probably need to evaluate what we're doing. What do you think about that?
I think Isaiah makes that clear. It's like, all these sacrifices are in vain. It's not that God didn't create the sacrificial system so that we would understand that blood covers sin, but you can't just do whatever you want and claim the blood or do a sacrifice before the incarnation.
Right.
And that's actually what he's talking about. It's like these are doing all these sacrifices. I'm not going to accept them because I know your heart. We end up being in the Cain and Abel story there.
Right. So I think we're about through with our 8 minutes, and thank you so much for being a part. Here's the takeaway I would ask you. Look at this verse, and it says verses 15 through 17 of chapter 1, and then ask God to reveal to you whether or not your worship is what He wants and what you really ought to want yourself. Worship should change us. Rudy and I were teasing earlier while he was making some good coffee, and we were teasing about how I always say, how are we like the bad guys? And I was telling him, well, I write about how am I like the bad guys, but I really think I'm one of the good guys. Well,
I agree.
Yeah. So this passage ought to get us down to, okay, how am I like the bad guys for real, and how can I repent? Hey, thanks a bunch for being a part today. Rudy, it is so much fun doing this with you.
It is.
Thank you. This is day 2. We're going to have a bunch more of these. See you tomorrow. Have a great day.